People who outlived insane prison sentences. In this video, we will explore the extraordinary journey through the lives of individuals who defied all odds and outlived their insane prison sentences. Locked away for years, even decades, these remarkable individuals managed to survive and overcome the unimaginable. So let's get started. Number 1. Introducing Thomas Trantino, a name that sends shivers down your spine. This American man found himself in the darkest depths of infamy after being found guilty of taking the lives of two brave police officers in Lodi, New Jersey, way back in 1963. The punishment that awaited him was nothing short of bone-chilling: the death penalty. As fate would have it, the death penalty was abolished in the 1970s, and so Thomas Trantino's destiny took an unexpected turn. Instead of meeting the electric chair, he was handed a life sentence, sealing his fate within the walls of prison. Little did he know that this would ignite a decades-long battle for parole, a battle that would see him taste freedom once again in 2002. Now, let's rewind to that fateful night on August 26, 1963. Reports of trouble at the infamous Angel Lounge on U.S. Route 46 in Lodi prompted Sergeant Peter Voto and probationary officer Gary Tedesco to investigate. Voto, stepping into the bar, left Tedesco outside unarmed, a decision that would prove fatal. Unbeknownst to them, Frank Falco and the infamous Thomas Trantino, looking to revel in the success of a recent robbery, lay in wait. Voto never returned. Concerned, Tedesco ventured into the bar, only to be caught off guard by the ruthless duo. Both officers were subjected to unimaginable torture, their lives extinguished in the cruelest manner. Falco's fate was sealed when New York City Police Department officers shot him dead during an attempted escape after hiding for a staggering 66 hours. Meanwhile, Trantino turned himself in at the East 22nd Street station in Manhattan on August 28th, his path to justice beginning. Fast forward to February 11, 2002, a date etched in history. After a staggering 38 years behind bars, Thomas Trantino was finally granted his freedom. Stepping out into a world dramatically transformed by the passage of time, he held the title of New Jersey's longest-serving prisoner. Number 2. Ricky Jackson, a man etched in the annals of Cleveland, Ohio's tragic history. This young teenager found himself in the grip of a twisted fate when in 1975, he was unjustly sentenced to death. The crime that stained his name was the alleged killing and robbery of Harold Franks, a money order salesman. But hold on tight, folks, because the truth behind Ricky's conviction is a shocking tale of false testimony and shattered lives. Eddie Vernon, a 13-year-old boy whose forced testimony became the linchpin of the case against Ricky and his co-defendants, the Bridgman brothers, Wiley and Ronnie. But here's the twist. Eddie would later become a key figure in undoing the injustice inflicted upon these men. No physical or forensic evidence ever tied them to the crime, and prior to this nightmare, they bore no criminal records. Witnesses vouched for their whereabouts, providing strong alibis. And yet, the wheels of injustice kept turning, and the trio was sentenced to death mere months after their arrest. Eventually, their sentences were commuted to life without parole, but the damage was done. In 2011, Cleveland Scene magazine took a deep dive into the case, exposing the inconsistencies in young Eddie Vernon's testimony and the absence of any other evidence linking Ricky, the Bridgman brothers, or anyone else to the crime. As the story unfolded, Eddie, under the guidance of his pastor, changed his official account. Armed with newfound evidence, Ricky Jackson and Wiley Bridgman bravely stepped forward, demanding a new trial in November 2014. And you know what? Justice prevailed. Judge Richard Magongo saw through the veil of injustice and courageously overturned their convictions, declaring them innocent. The charges against Ricky and Wiley were dropped, and they were finally set free. Number 3. Next up, we have the story of Joe Logino, a man who held a haunting record in the United States. For decades, this land of dreams held the notorious title of sentencing the most children to life in prison without parole. And guess what? Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, emerged as the heavyweight champion, locking away more young souls than any other state. At the ripe age of 83, Joe finally tasted the sweet nectar of freedom in 2021, after enduring a staggering incarnation that spanned decades. Can you even fathom the weight of such a sad fact? Picture a young Joe, only 15 years old, being thrown behind bars during the era when Dwight D. Eisenhower graced the Oval Office, and Nat King Cole's mesmerizing tune, Pretend, soared on the Billboard 100. The world that greeted Joe upon his release was beyond his wildest imagination. You see, Joe Ligon found himself entangled in a web of robberies and stabbings alongside 4 other black teenagers in Philadelphia back in 1953. These horrifying acts claimed the lives of 2 innocent souls. Joe, in his own account, admits to wielding a knife that fateful night, but he vehemently denies taking anyone's life. He claims to have undergone a transformation during those long, arduous years behind bars. The young man who once walked a dark path now stands before us, pondering his future and contemplating a job cleaning the offices of the very lawyers who fought tooth and nail to secure his release. Number 4. Otis Johnson, a man who experienced a jaw-dropping shockwave when he stepped foot into the bustling heart of New York City's Times Square. Otis, untouched by society since 1975, emerges from a world of confinement to find himself surrounded by a sea of people. But here's the kicker. Everyone's walking at lightning speed, faces locked in a trance, wires dangling from their ears. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi dystopia. Otis Johnson had been locked away in the confines of a prison for a whopping 44 years. Imagine the sheer shock of being thrust into a world where everyone seems to be undercover agents, wired up and disconnected from their surroundings. Steve Jobs? iPhones? Texting while walking? It's a whole new universe for Otis, and boy, does it leave him utterly flabbergasted. Gatorade, of all things, blows his mind. He can hardly believe the sight of people engrossed in their screens, oblivious to the world around them. In August of 2014, after 4 decades of incarceration, Otis Johnson was finally set free, armed with little more than an ID, some papers chronicling his criminal history, a mere $40, and a pair of bus tickets. Just imagine, my friends, stepping out of prison only to find yourself standing on the doorstep of an alien planet, thrust into a world you barely recognize. It's like being dropped into the middle of a Betty Smith novel, where provisions for starting life anew are scarce, and the challenges seem insurmountable. Number 5. Nanny Betty Smith is a woman whose life took a dramatic turn on that fateful New Year's Day in 1963. A young woman, filled with hopes and dreams, found herself facing a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the tragic death of a child under her care. Fast forward to the year 2012, and Nanny Betty Smith emerges from behind prison walls, now walking with a cane, a testament to the passing years. 2 previous governors had denied her pleas for clemency, leaving her behind bars for longer than any other woman in the entire United States. But finally, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon when Governor Jan Brewer granted her clemency. The members of Arizona's parole board agreed that she was no longer the same woman who committed that tragic act in 1963. You see, Nanny Betty Smith is what we call an old code lifer, handed a life sentence before the year 1973. And let us tell you, getting out of prison as an old code lifer is no easy feat. It requires a communication from the governor, and since 1989, only 3 of these lifers have been granted such a privilege. It took nearly half a century for justice to see the light, almost 50 years after she was found guilty of the heartbreaking loss of baby Sandra Gerberich, one of the 4 children she had been entrusted with as a 20-year-old live-in babysitter. Number 6. Next up, we have a mere 17-year-old finding himself standing before a Michigan County court, faced with a life sentence without the glimmer of parole. It was an era when John F. Kennedy was at the helm of the United States, a long time gone, but not forgotten. But this story takes an unexpected turn. In 2019, after more than 56 years behind bars, Sheldry Topp emerged into a world transformed. To celebrate his newfound freedom, he embarked on a steak dinner extravaganza with his brother, savoring the taste of liberation. Can you fathom the weight of those years? The passage of time that held him captive for far too long. Sheldry Topp, the oldest juvenile lifer in Michigan, never wavered in his conviction. Through the years, he sought a glimmer of hope, petitioning for a shorter sentence in both 1987 and 2008. only to face rejection. Let us journey back to the year 1962, where the city of Chicago witnessed a dark chapter. Within 2 weeks of breaking into Charles Davis's house, a heinous act stained the pages of history. Armed with a knife, Top tragically claimed Davis's life. The victim, aged 50, fell victim to a fate that can never be undone. But let us not forget the intricate web of circumstances that led Shildry Top to that fateful moment. Court records reveal a troubled past, marked by a series of mental hospital visits since the tender age of 12. It is said that he eluded the confines of a mental hospital in Pontiac, Michigan, on the very day of the murder. Electroshock therapy and hydrotherapy, treatments that now belong to a bygone era, were administered to him, potentially influencing his fragile state of mind on that ill-fated day. Number 7. It was a crisp November day in 1978 when the biker extraordinaire, J.T. McGarry, vanished from his Ventura County abode in California. The rumblings of his disappearance sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone on edge. But the grim truth was soon unearthed. Just a few days later, JT's lifeless body was discovered, marred by multiple gunshot wounds, callously discarded on the desolate side of a frontage road, miles away from his once thriving home. The world mourned the loss of a vibrant soul, while whispers of a name started to circulate: Michael Hamline. The gears of justice churned, and Hamline found himself behind bars, accused of the heinous crime that rocked the community to its core. Yet, in the face of adversity, Michael vehemently proclaimed his innocence, a voice drowned out by the relentless march of the legal system. The district attorney's office cunningly maneuvered to hold a secret hearing, one from which Michael and his legal counsels were barred, all in the name of safeguarding an elusive anonymous source. A smoke and mirrors act, if you will. The court granted their request to shroud crucial police reports in darkness, shielding them from prying eyes. But here's the twist. These reports, concealed from Michael's defense team, held the key to his salvation. Early on in the investigation, these hidden reports contained admissions of guilt from individuals other than Michael. Others had brazenly confessed to the very crime he was accused of. Yet these bombshells were intentionally kept under wraps by the police. The sinister machine of justice had conspired against him. The California Innocence Project, in a remarkable collaboration with the Ventura County District Attorney's Office, embarked on a journey to right the wrongs of the past. Modern DNA testing breathed new life into this cold case, forcing it to confront its own fallibility. And the truth emerged from the shadows. Michael Hamline's corrupt conviction was overturned, toppling like a house of cards built on a foundation of deceit. A chapter of his life, stolen unjustly, was finally closed. At the time of his release, Michael held the dubious honor of being the person who had endured the longest wrongful imprisonment in the state of California. Number 8. Moving on, a story of Warren John Nutter. Picture this. Just days before the joyful bells of Christmas 2021, the Iowa State Penitentiary bid farewell to an old soul. Warren Jack Nutter, an octogenarian of 84 years, took his final breath within the prison walls, marking the end of a life spent behind bars. It all started back in 1956, when the world was a different place. Independence, Ohio, became the backdrop for a tragic incident that would forever alter Nutter's destiny. In a fateful encounter with a police officer, a life was tragically cut short, and Nutter found himself staring into the abyss of a justice system that showed no mercy. Sentenced to a staggering 65 years in prison, Nutter etched his name in the annals of history as the inmate who spent the longest stretch behind bars in the state of Iowa. His story echoed across the nation as he joined the ranks of the longest-serving prisoners in the entire country. This was a man who had known the cold embrace of the law since his teenage years, with brushes with legality marking his path as early as age 14. In a daring attempt to seek solace on the golden shores of California, Nutter and his cohorts embarked on a treacherous journey that ultimately led to their downfall. Along the way, they committed car theft and brazenly robbed a store, an ill-fated string of actions that would forever seal their fates. Their desperate bid to evade capture ended in tragedy when a police officer fell victim to a fatal shot. The echoes of that gunshot reverberated through the years, haunting Nutter's every step. Initially handed a death sentence, Nutter's life was spared when the governor, in an act of clemency, commuted his sentence to life in prison in 1957. This twist of fate would later contribute to the abolishment of the death penalty in Iowa, as Nutter's case cast a spotlight on the flaws of such a draconian punishment. With that said, thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. And if you found this content helpful, give the video a like. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.